like to kind of not give a lot of information when they go into this world because of a huge thing that happens at the beginning of this book that sets the motion for everything out. What? Hello everybody, my name is Kelsey and we're about to get very, very nerdy with my October wrap up. So in October, I had a pretty decent sized month actually. I did a couple of special TBRs throughout the month. I had some spooky reads I wanted to get to. I got some pretty decent progress on my fall reads. I've got some books that I kind of just put off to the fall, October and November, and so I tried to get as much as I could in October. I think I did a pretty good job because I ended up reading 15 things. And then I also DNF'd one, so if you count that, 16? Maybe? But let's just get right into it. We've got lots of books to talk about. We've got lots of stats to go over. So let's dive into those. So like I mentioned, I did read 15 books, but I did DNF one, and now I usually include my DNFs in my stats, but because I barely made any progress in that book, it's not included in the stats. So, with 15 books being read this month, I read a total of 5,219 pages, and that was over 6 audiobooks, 3 physical books, 1 ebook, and 5 mixed. And for the age category, we stuck to primarily 2 things. So we had 1 middle grade. We did fit 1 middle grade in, but we had 6 YA books and 8 adult books. So yeah, we stuck to 2 very specific age categories. And as far as my genres goes, it kind of, it was what it was. So we had 4 romance books, 1 mystery book, 8 fantasy books, 1 classic book, and 1 historical fiction. And with star ratings, this is pretty normal for me. We had 5 5-star reads, 7 4-star reads, and 3 3-star reads. So we'll start off this wrap up with the book that I DNF'd, which if you saw my, well, you just saw it, but if you saw my TBR video, you will know what it was, and it was this one, which is Spark by Alice Broadway. I made it 2 chapters into this book, so like, I don't know, maybe 20 pages on a, if we're being generous. And I realized that while I kind of remembered most of what happened in the book before, which was Ink, and I did read that last year and really enjoyed it, I'd had too much time between that book and this book, and my kind of reading has changed a lot in the last few years, but primarily in those last year. I think it's just changed a lot, and I just wasn't interested in this anymore. I didn't care. It wasn't the book's fault, it was me. I'm not interested in this series anymore. And I'd hyped it up so much in my head. I was gonna wait until the fall because this was the perfect time to read these books. And I started it and had absolutely no desire to pick them up. So I decided to DNF this book and not continue with the series. I have other things I want to read, so I don't want to waste my time on something that I would just kind of be pushing my way through. So yeah, I decided to just not really do that one. So I kind of gave it a try, but I kind of didn't. But I did want to mention that because it's not in my stats, but I tried it. So the actual first book that I started off the month with was my Tessa Dare buddy read that I'm doing with my friends Brooke and Taylor. I will leave their channels linked down below. Sorry, their Instagrams linked down below. And the book that we read this month was the Wallflower Wager. This is the 3rd in the Girl Meets Duke series, which is basically 4 books. Only 3 are out. The 4th one's coming out in like 2 years. But it follows this group of friends, and it's their respective romances in each one. And this one follows, oh my goodness, Penelope. And she is literally obsessed with taking in creatures, specifically like animals, but like any hurt creature she just wants to love and protect and help them. So she's got like the most ridiculous amount of animals. I know it's back on the back here. She's got kittens, a 2-legged dog, a foul-mouthed parrot, a goat, an otter, a hedgehog, and I feel like she's got cows as well. So she's just got all of these what you wouldn't think of as like normal household pet kind of animals, and they've all been, they're hurt, like the dog, like I said, has only 2 legs, or they were, you know, their owner died, or like something's happened and no one has taken them in, so she does. But she's like from a well-known family, so people know of her, and this guy moves in next door. He bought the house next to it with the hopes of kind of like flipping it and selling it to a high bidder and getting a lot of money for it because his house is right next to hers. But she has all these ridiculous animals that is stopping his reconstruction of it. So it's the two of them. Definitely this bargain that they kind of put towards each other because he wants the animals gone, but also her brother is really not happy with her living on her own in this house. And so her aunt basically comes to deliver a message of, hey, he's going to show up by the end of the month and you need to have some sort of social standing. Like, go out in public, go to things, don't just hide in your house. And so they work together, her and the Duke, to help get rid of these animals and bring them to a very well-loved home and that they will be taken care of, but also like help her go out in society. So it's their love story, and it is one of my favorite Tessa Dare books to date. Huge trigger warnings in this book for sexual assault of a minor, which is not something I expected to see in a historical romance. So that's a whole thing, but I don't know, just like as these two people come to care for one another, and people think that she is super naive, and she is to an extent, but she knows that she is naive. I just love them. They're so cute because they're these two very broken people. It's kind of like the Duchess Steele, which is the first in this series, because there's these two very broken people for different reasons, and they kind of make each other whole again, almost. Not in the sense of like they need the other person to be whole, but like together they work with each other to kind of like create confidence in each other almost. And I just thought that that was so beautiful and I loved it. So definitely one of my favorites. Definitely want to reread this because I loved it so much. And she's just so sweet. And then you've got also all of these ridiculous animals that just bring a whole different level of shenanigans to the story. So if you're looking for a Tessa Dare book or you're looking for a historical romance book, this is one of my favorites. Oh, I gave it 5 stars. I don't think I told you that, but I feel like that's pretty obvious. 5 stars. The next 2 books I'm going to do together because they're part of the same series, and that is 2 and 3 in the Bridgerton series. So I read The Viscount Who Loved Me, which is the 2nd book, and then An Offer from a Gentleman, which is the 3rd book. These both got 5 stars from me. I just really went down this rabbit hole at the beginning of the month where I looked into the 2nd season of Bridgerton and kind of like when that was coming. Also the unofficial Bridgerton album that was created by a couple of lovely artists out there came out recently, and so like I just have been in a Bridgerton mood, you know, and I wanted to know this story because this one follows Anthony, who is the oldest son, or the oldest child actually, of the Bridgertons, and it's his love story, and it's kind of hinted at, and I'm pretty sure, actually I'm very sure that the 2nd series, or the 2nd season of the Netflix show is going to be following him. And while I personally liked the 1st season of the Netflix show better than the 1st book, I really wanted to know their stories before I got into it because I personally found these much better than the 1st one. I'm not gonna lie. But so this one follows Anthony, and then the 2nd one, or the 3rd one, follows Benedict, who is the 2nd son. I freaking loved them. I liked Anthony's story a little bit better. This one was very good, but it's definitely, without even saying it was, it's for sure a Cinderella retelling, because we've got Anthony, or not Anthony, we have Benedict, who falls for this mysterious woman who turns out to be a servant. Well, she turns out to be an illegitimate child who becomes a servant. It's a whole thing. So I really liked both of these. Again, this one in my opinion is better. I just liked the banter and the conversations between our main characters more. This was more of an enemies to lovers than this one was. This one was more like attraction at first sight almost. But I don't know, she just writes banter really well in my opinion, and I understand why people are obsessed. I want to continue with the series so badly. Like, I am so invested in this family. But I will say, if you want to continue with the entire series, at least the copies that I have are like more recent reprints, so they all have what are called 2nd epilogues, which is basically after Julia Quinn wrote the entire series, she came back and wrote epilogues for all of the books as like a 2nd epilogue, as in like, oh, it's been like 10 to 15 years, where are they now? And it spoils who ends up with who for the rest of the series. Now, I knew some of them, so I'm not that upset about it, but if you don't want to know, I would suggest skipping the second epilogue until you read the entire series, because they're still really cute. They're really fun moments between our main characters. Depending on which book you're in, obviously the main characters of that book are going to be the main characters of this second epilogue, but it does spoil who ends up with who, because obviously the Bridgertons are very close, so their siblings are all going to be part of this. So it did spoil the fourth book, which follows Colin Bridgerton. So I know who he ends up with, but I kind of suspected that before I even went into the book. So I really want to know. But yeah, I just went down a freaking rabbit hole. I read these in like a day. No, I read these in a weekend. I started this one on like a Friday, and then I ended this one on like a Saturday or a Sunday afternoon. So it's a good thing it's football season, because my husband didn't see me for like 2 days straight. Yeah, I like them, okay? I'm obsessed with this family. I think they're really cute. There's a hare. There it is. Oh my goodness. I will say trigger warnings in this one for attempted rape, just because of the situations that some of our characters get in. But I understand why Anthony and Kate are people's favorites. She's definitely winning for me right now, but I really loved them. I thought they were, you know, really cute. I liked seeing our characters kind of fall for each other. I also liked in this one seeing the class difference, because I know there are books out there, I've read at least one, where there's a class difference between our main characters, but I haven't read that many, so it was really interesting to see, and I think that that's starting to be hinted at the end of the Bridgerton series. I just like reading these and then seeing how they've incorporated the entire story of all of these siblings into the first season. So would I like to finish this entire series before season 2 comes out? Yes, I would, because I think they'll incorporate these in kind of interlocking in between each other, because obviously each season follows a specific romance, but they're all back behind the scenes things. I just really liked these, okay? That's the moral of my story. They both got 5 stars. I'm a sucker for the series. So the next book that I ended up picking up was Frostheart by Jamie Littler. So this one is one that I started, I don't even know, a few months ago, July, August, I have no idea. But I put it down for a month because of some of the reading that I was doing. I just wasn't going to have time for it. So I picked it up again. I was about halfway through, so I've only technically read the second half in this month. But I really enjoyed it. It ended up giving 4 stars. I will say I think the story suffered from me putting it down for a month. Now, I didn't forget anything. I remembered everything that had happened in the first half of the book, but that kind of momentum of reading took me a while to get back into the story a little bit, because I think I stopped in the middle of an action scene because I'm an idiot. But like, it just took a little bit of time to kind of get back into the story, but I really enjoyed it. I'm very interested to see where we're going to go from here, because there's still so much story to be told, but just some of like the reveals, kind of like the villain character of this book was really interesting. I liked just seeing our main character grow up. He was so cute, just like, you know, learning to trust people, that kind of thing. Many of you know, but this follows Ash, who is a song weaver, and this takes place in a world where there are these things called Leviathans, which are these like evil creatures basically that attack people, and they speak through song. And so because Ash is a song weaver, he has the ability to speak to these Leviathans and kind of understand these Leviathans, and because of that, it's thought of as like an evil ability, and so he basically gets banished from the little teeny tiny town that he lives in. It's all in like this frozen Iceland, and so he goes on the voyage on this ship called the Frostheart. And it's just him kind of trying to figure out where his parents are, because his parents were adventurers and left and just never came back. So he's trying to figure out what happened to them, because he's pretty sure that they are still alive. And it's just kind of like him following some clues. It was cute. It was very fun. It definitely was a good middle grade. I think a lot of kids are going to love this. It's definitely good for like the winter time, because it takes place in an ice world, basically. And I was cold reading it. I'm not going to lie. The fact that they're on this ship in the middle of like an ice forest, not even a forest, an ice lake, I was cold, okay? So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think, again, it lacked for me putting it down, so I want to continue with the series. I want to continue and see where we go. But yeah, hopefully I won't stop in the middle again, because that one's on me. I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more if I had just continued with it, but you know, time got away from me. but I still liked it. Okay, so the next 4 books I'm going to talk about are the books that I read in that very fun vlog I did near the beginning of the month, which is the BookTube Made Me series that I'm starting. I'm very, very excited about it. Where basically I take a booktuber and I read books that I have bought or have become interested in because of that specific person. So I did Ashley from Frolic Through Fiction, so I won't go too much into detail on these books just because I did an entire vlog about them. But the first one that I read was Heart of Fae, which is the first in the Otherworld series by Emma Hamm. This one is a very loose kind of Beauty and the Beast retelling. It follows this world where there are these magical fairies and unseelie and seelie fairies and things like that, but the world has forgotten them. But our main character's mother, when she was growing up, remembered these and kind of did all of these traditions, and so she continues to do these traditions. And because of that, she's trying to save her family. I say family like that because it's not really like biological family. There's this beetle plague, blood beetle plague that's going around, and so she goes to one of these fairy shrines to basically ask for help, and gets answered and is sent on this quest to this fairy island where this person is, and he's our Beast character. And it was really fascinating to me because for him, the kind of like Beast character, it has a whole backstory, obviously, but his beastiness basically stems from the fact that instead of bleeding, he has gems that appear. So like, for example, if he punches a wall, instead of like his knuckles bleeding in the gashes, they will have like gemstones appear, and they are permanent. They can't go away. And so he is kind of deformed a little bit, and people kind of look at him very differently because of that. So I think I gave this 5 stars. Is that what I did? I gave it 4.5. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was so much fun. I loved seeing our couple kind of like grow towards each other. It's got all of the, you know, fun hate to love moments that you expect from a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but at the same time, this curse on him is so different than anything I've ever read about before, and I just thought it was really fascinating. The one thing I'm bitter about is that even though this is part of a companion series, the first 2 books in the series are their story, so it stops halfway. So huge cliffhanger at the end, and I'm still bitter and haven't had time to fit the second one in, because I need to know, dang it, like things are happening. But if you like any kind of story with fae in it, if you like anything that's a Beauty and the Beast retelling or has that enemies to lovers feel to it, I think you'll really enjoy this one. It's on Kindle Unlimited, so you can get it if you have Kindle Unlimited, but it's just great. You know, I really was surprised. I thought I was going to like it, but I didn't realize I was going to like it as much. I had a couple of issues with some of the writing, but overall it was really great, and I want to continue. The next book I read was not as successful, and that was Master of Sorrows by Justin. Yes, Justin Travis Call. This is kind of been explained to me as a villain origin story almost. It takes place in a very high fantasy world, so if you're a big high fantasy person, I think you'll enjoy this. I am not a huge high fantasy person, especially a high fantasy that has so much fighting in it, because there's so much fighting, and not like it's bloody, it's like they're in classes learning how to fight, and so there's a lot of like sparring and things happening, and it's just, I didn't like the way it was written. I think it was written well compared to like, y'all know I don't like The Lord of the Rings, how it's written. I love the world, but I don't like how it's written. It's got that very classic fantasy feel to it. This had that feel without having the same wording, so it was easier to understand, but at the same time, I didn't feel connected to any of the characters. I just kind of was reading it to finish it. I was hoping it was going to get better. I honestly have no desire to pick up the second one. This one just kind of fell a little flat for me, which I kind of expected going into it, just because, again, I'm not a huge high fantasy person. My fantasies have to have something else to it, and this one just wasn't it, and that's fine. So I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars, because there are aspects to this world that I find really interesting, but like, I swear nothing happened in this book, because like, for example, this guy goes through the woods to meet this person, and they're having this conversation, and they're doing this thing in the woods, and it lasts like a third of the book. Like, the middle chunk of the book is just him in this woods talking to this guy, and he does learn a lot of stuff, but at the same time, I'm like, this could have happened in like 5 chapters, and all the chapters are really short. it just felt like it dragged in a lot of places for me. So, not my favorite, but I'm happy I gave it a try because I've been hearing really good things about it. And again, I liked the villain origin story idea. It just didn't work for me. The next one that I picked up for this video was the Wren Hunt by Mary Watson. This is the one that I definitely like sparked this whole idea. This is a book that is set in Ireland and it's based on Irish mythology. And it's one that Ashley basically has said is super underrated and she wants everyone to read it. So this takes place in a world where there are two warring druid families. You've got people who can kind of see the future almost in patterns, and then you've got more of the like logical side of this world. And Wren is chased through the woods as part of this warped childhood game I believe it's Christmas, every Christmas, by her enemies, but they don't know that they're her enemies. And so she basically, by the people who raised her, she ends up infiltrating the other camp, one of their foundations, and working there kind of as a spy to get some of this information that her like grandfather wants for like their clan to protect them, because the other one is becoming very, very powerful at the expense of her clan. I'm saying clan because I don't know how else to like phrase this, but basically she's spying, and she comes to really appreciate and understand this other world. And then also there's like a huge freaking twist at the end of this book that I did not see coming at all. I suspected it about 3 seconds before we were told. So it was very well done. I like this for people who want to get into fantasy from contemporary, because it's very contemporarily set and it has little hints of fantasy in it, but it's very much, I could believe that this story and the kind of fantastical elements of this happen in our world today. And I also like this because this is a standalone. There is another book that's written in this world, but it isn't like a continuation. It's a totally different story. So if you want a standalone fantasy, I like this one, like I said, especially for people who want to get into fantasy, because it doesn't feel like a fantasy. You almost forget that these things are fantastical and aren't real because it's so normalized in this world. It almost feels kind of like a dystopian, a little bit like a different form of future, but I really enjoyed it. I ended up giving this one 4 stars, I believe. I did. Yeah, I'm really glad I read this. It's so pretty as well, and I understand why she's like, hey, people need to read this. I agree. The ending will shock you in all of the best ways. And the last one for this video that I did is actually The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. I ended up giving this one 5 stars. Now, from what I know going into this is what I'm going to tell you, which is not a whole lot. So a lot of people like to kind of not give a lot of information when they go into this world because of a huge thing that happens at the beginning of this book. So basically, this takes place in a world of clairvoyance, and they're thought of as like really bad by people who don't have this ability. And there's levels of degree with them. Like there are some people who are really lower and like more, you know, common, and like people who use different mediums like tarot cards and mirrors and like just other abilities that go into being able to be a clairvoyant. And so it follows our main character, who is one. She is one of the more rare ones, and one night something goes not great, and she ends up being picked up by what she believes is part of like the police force, and your options are to either be turned into one of them or die. And so she's like, I'm dead, I'm for sure dead. But then she's brought somewhere else, and you're opened up to a whole new world and a whole new situation. So there's not really a whole lot I can say about this because I don't want to spoil the thing that everyone doesn't want to spoil. I understand why people don't want to spoil that. It changes the entire, I don't know, idea of this world. It opens up the world to a whole different situation. And I thought it was fascinating. Check trigger warnings. I think there are some trigger warnings in this book, but it's very much like our main character readapting to the situations she finds herself in. And it is, I've read somewhere, because there is a little bit of a love interest situation in this book between her and, like, for lack of a better word, her captor. That's not right, but it's kind of Stockholm Syndrome-esque, but at the same time it's also not, so I didn't mind the romance because it's barely part of the plot, but there is like hints of it, and I'm curious where it's going to go from here, like in the rest of the series, because this is a pretty decent sized series. There are 4 books out right now, and I believe there are at least 3 more planned, so maybe I'll wait until the entire series comes out before I continue, or maybe I will just continue because like I want to know where the story goes from here. But it gives me some of the vibes of the Darkest Minds series a little bit. I liked it. I did. I gave it 5 stars. It was surprising. I understand why Ashley freaking loves this series. So, yeah. I can't really say a whole lot because I don't want to spoil anything, but it was very good. So the next book that I ended up picking up was this one, which is Jane Steele by Lindsay Fay. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. This has been described to me as kind of like a remix of Jane Eyre, but if the Jane character was actually a serial killer, which was fascinating to me. Now I will say I thoroughly enjoyed my time reading this. Since putting it down, I've not thought about it once. I've honestly forgotten a lot about what's in this book, but I would seriously look up trigger warnings for this because like attempted rape, attempted sexual assault is in here, really adult themes are in here. One thing that I found quite interesting about this is that while yes, it does follow the same like basic structure and plot-wise as Jane Eyre, the book Jane Eyre exists in this world because our main character Jane, her favorite book is Jane Eyre. And I just found that really fascinating that like, and it wasn't unbelievable, you know, like it felt like it would make sense for this Jane to connect with that Jane because they were in very similar situations. And so I don't know, I found it really interesting, and this book is presented to you like this is Jane Steele writing her autobiography as to why she's a serial killer, and I don't like the word serial killer because yes, it does technically apply, but it feels wrong for her. But I really enjoyed it. I liked seeing just this idea and this very gritty adult retelling of a very beloved classic by most people. So not as gothic as Jane Eyre, but I did really enjoy it. There is some darker things that happen in this book, and I did really like it. So I gave it 4 stars. I am so happy I finally read that. It's been on my list to read, oh my gosh, it's for so long. And then the next 3 that I'm going to talk about, I actually talked about in my kind of Halloween spooky vlog that I did at the end of October. So the first one that I picked up in that was this one, which is Hallowe'en Party by Agatha Christie. This is a Poirot novel, so it follows the detective Hercule Poirot, and it's him. So basically what happens is there is this Halloween party that takes place in this town, and one of Poirot's friends, who is a writer, a novelist, I'm pretty sure is the equivalent of the Agatha Christie in this world, is there. And so there's a young girl who's trying to kind of, what everyone thinks is she's trying to like sound cool for this author, and she claims that she's seen a murder and no one believes her, and then later that night she's found dead, like drowned in like the bucket that they did bobbing for apples in. And so this friend asked Poirot to come in and kind of just like take a look and see what's going on. So he comes to this town and starts to investigate, figure out kind of what's going on and what happened to this young girl. She's only 13, so she was super young. But I really liked this book. I ended up giving it 4 stars. Not my favorite by her by any means. I thought that just like there was just some aspects that I was like, this is just kind of okay, you know? But I like how it tied together. I liked seeing the situation that he was presented and kind of seeing as he like puzzled his way through it. I always find that really interesting. I will say these are definitely for the people who want non-exciting mysteries, in the sense of like you don't need to be on the edge of your seat, you don't need to have those like thriller mysteries. It's just kind of like, here's a nice little cozy mystery for you to solve. It's kind of one of those. So I really liked it for that reason. I wanted there to be just a little more excitement within this because there really wasn't in this one. I'd like to try out her Miss Marple series. I think that one would be interesting to see. It's also much smaller than the Hercule Poirot series, so we'll see. But I did enjoy this. It was perfect for the time of year, mostly because it takes place around this Halloween party. It doesn't really have any other spooky elements to it, besides the fact that someone dies. But yeah, it was good. It just wasn't memorable for me. But then, don't worry, I followed that up with another great book, which was Fangs by Sarah Anderson. This is a graphic novel that follows a vampire and a werewolf who fall in love. Now, I gave this 5 stars. It is so freaking cute. It is for the people who just want a nice little, like, 1 hour to snuggle and be happy, is basically what you want from this book, because it is not like one continual story. It's like serialized almost, in the sense of like each page is like a different story, a different small story in the lives of these two people, and it's very interesting to see how much you can relate to some of the situations they're in, because it's just this couple coming to learn to be around each other and be a couple. They just happen to be a werewolf and a vampire. So, I mean, there's little things like, you know, she can't be in the sun, and she drinks blood. And then there's the, like, he turns into a wolf every full moon. And so, like, you've got those things, which are obviously not normal, but just some of the situations they're in are so freaking cute. I really liked it. It's definitely a feel-good book. It definitely has its very humorous moments. I highly recommend for people who just want like a good old time. I'm gonna go back to this whenever I just want to be put in a happy mood. Like, that's the kind of book that this is, and I just really enjoyed it. So 5 stars, can't say too much about it. It was just cute and adorable, and I loved it. The next book I picked up, and the last one for that vlog, was Gods and Monsters by Shelby Mahurin, which is the 3rd and final in her Serpent and Dove series. So I gave this one 4 stars. I really liked it. I did a little research before I went into this to kind of see if I could find some information about the second book, because it'd been a while. I'd read the first one twice, when I originally read it, and then again last year in preparation for Blood and Honey, but I know that one pretty well, and I don't remember a lot from the second book. So I went online and I found a couple of videos where like the author was telling you some of the important things from the second book to remember before going into this one, and I found somebody else's review, which is kind of like going into the first 2 books in preparation for this one, so you had all the pertinent information. Obviously, huge spoilers, but those were really helpful for me because I'm going through the second book. They're both saying things that I didn't even know happened in the second book, and I was like, excuse me, did I read the same book? So I don't even know what happened. Maybe that's why I didn't like the second book, because I had no idea what was happening. However, this book was great. It took me about a third of the way through to get into this one. There's a lot at the beginning with possession, and so when we get to a very specific part in that plot line, it picked up for me and it got really interesting. And then there's a lot more romantic scenes between our main characters, Lou and Reed, in this book because of some of the plot things that were happening. And I liked it a lot. I can understand why this would be like a favorite for people's, and this felt like a very good finish to a series. All of our questions were answered. There's still some like question on what's going to happen in the future, but all of the main questions that were brought up in the series have been answered. And so I really enjoyed this one. It's the final book in a series, so I can't really say too much about it, but I personally really liked it. Do I like it more than the first one? I don't know. I think I like the first one still as my favorite just because I liked seeing our main characters fall in love for the first time, but I did like a lot of the aspects of this because, like, I swear, once I hit that, like, specific plot thing about a third of the way through the book, I was hooked and I could not stop reading. So, very well done. I haven't been that hooked in quite a while, and I'm really happy because I almost didn't read this. I almost decided to DNF the entire series and just kind of, like, not continue after what happened in the second book, but I'm really glad I did. I'm glad I got the conclusion that I needed for the series. I liked it a lot. And then I had like 3 days left in the month, and so I tried to squeeze in some mangas, is really what happened. So I picked up the second volume of Hat Atelier, which is by Kawame Shirahama. I read the first one, I think, earlier this year sometime, and I really enjoyed this one. I gave this one 3.5 stars. I enjoy this world. I find it very fascinating. This is set in a magic system that is very different than I've seen before. It all revolves around writing, which is very interesting. So I like the magic system. My issue with this series is it always takes me a long time. Now, this is only the second volume, but in both volumes, it took me a while to get invested in the world. And once we were invested in the world, then the volume ended. And so I feel like this would be a good one to collect all of them and then binge the whole thing because you would already be invested in it and then you can just continue on. But if it's like serialized like this where you read it every couple of months, then I keep kind of like coming out of the story and then having to like work my way back into it. With that being said, I still really enjoyed this book. I still want to continue with this series. I think it's a very well done series. Again, like I said, the magic system is fascinating to me. But it basically follows our main character, Coco, in the first book, who something not great happens to her mom, and so she gets whisked off by this witch to basically learn how to be a witch. And it's a lot about her learning this world and kind of becoming an apprentice with these other people who are apprentices for him already. And so this one opens up the world a little bit more. One thing about this author, though, I swear, they pick all of their high-stress situations, and that's where they end every single one of their volumes. The first volume, as well as this one, both had one of the biggest cliffhangers I've ever seen. And I am shocked. Like, I need the third one, okay? Like, I immediately always want to pick up whatever the next volume is, but then I don't, and then I wait, and then it takes me a while to get invested. But it is very cute. It's a little bit found family-esque, so if you like that trope, you might like these. But they're cute. I like them. They are fantasy mangas, which usually don't work for me, but I like these for some reason. They work, and they're just cute. I then followed that up with a manga. And then I bought the first volume of, oh, I don't know, a few months ago, no more than that, earlier this year when I went through my big, like, I'm gonna buy a bunch of mangas phase. And it's been a little bit, and I wasn't sure about it, and then I decided just to pick it up, just to see, not really expecting to love it, and that is, if it's for my daughter, I'd even defeat a demon lord. And this one is by, oh my goodness, the story is by Chiroli, and the art is by Hoda. So this one is the first volume of, I think, like, 7. It's not finished. I feel like there's 7 or 8 out or something. But I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I really enjoy this book. It is really cheesy. It's really fast-paced at the beginning because they want to get you into this world really, really quickly. But basically, we follow our main character, who is 18. I don't even remember his name. His name is Dale. He is an accomplished adventurer. Now, I'm not entirely sure what an adventurer is in this world, but it's an entire career path. And on one of his jobs, he discovers this young girl who has demon horns and discovers what he believes is her father or her guardian dead. And so he takes her home with him to kind of, you know, just make sure that she's protected, and it's the story of him and like a couple of his roommates really coming to care for this little girl, and he takes on official guardianship of her and really cares for her a whole lot. So this is a wholesome, super, super sweet story, but she's super, super cute. She's really sweet. You're watching her learn their language, learn to be a cook, and like learn to read and write, and she's super cute, and I loved it. So I'm not really sure where the story could go, but I did not expect to love this because I have a love-hate relationship with fantasy mangas, but I ended up really enjoying this one, and I want to continue with it. The name is misleading, because while the name is true, according to like the events of it, it's such a weird and long name that I was like, there's no way I'm going to enjoy this book. It's so ridiculous. But I did. I really loved it, and I want to continue, so I need to find some more volumes of this, because it's just wholesome. You know, it's just wholesome. I just want to hug her. I just want her to feel love. And the very last book that I ended up picking up was The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. It's a short story that he wrote. I'm sure many people know about it. It follows the Headless Horseman legend, but I'd never read it. I didn't even know really, I knew of it, but that's about it. So I decided that this year was the year I was going to sit down and read it. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars, which I feel like is actually really generous, because I read this with an audiobook on in the hopes that it would help the classical kind of writing style. It did not. I had to look up a synopsis when I was done, because I wasn't even sure what I read. But it basically follows this character named Ichabod Crane, who comes to this little town that's known as Sleepy Hollow, and they have very mysterious witchy legends. There's lots of ghosts that are supposed to happen, and one of them is this Headless Horseman, who is believed to be an old soldier, I think. Is that even right? I don't even know. Who shows up. That's the legend. And so Ichabod is a teacher, and he comes to this town, and it mainly follows him and this other guy who are both fighting for the hand of this woman. And then it ends very weirdly. Like, it was weird. Like I said, I had to look up what it was about because I have no idea what I read. So 3 stars. There's not really a whole lot else I can say about it. I'm glad I know what the story is about now, so that going forward when I see things based on it, or I don't know, it just comes up in like it's gonna come up in conversation. But like if it comes up, I'm gonna understand references to it because now I've read it and I kind of know more about what it's about. But it was not the best of times. I'm not gonna lie. I could have saved time and literally just looked it up on the internet, and then I would have been happy. I should have done that. That's what I should have done. Anyway, that's my wrap up for you guys. I hope you enjoyed the hodgepodge that is October of both spooky, mystery, and other. I had some fun doing some very kind of different themed reading vlogs. I hope you enjoyed those. I'll leave them. I've probably linked them already, but I'll link them up above and down below if you'd like to check those out. I really enjoyed my reading this month. It was actually pretty good. Like, even though I had some iffy ones, I still had some really good ones. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know down below if you've read any of the books that I haven't mentioned, or if you had a book that you read in October that you would just like to talk about. Let me know. I'd love to hear your ravings or rants, depending on which one it is, or both. But if you like this video, and I very much hope that you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below if you want to be part of this awesome growing family. I've also got all my social media down there, as well as other fun bookish links, so don't forget to check all of those out, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!